Well, hello and welcome everyone to our Q2 2011 Corporate Board Strategy Meeting. We're discussing Lafarge Cement Syria today, and today our execs will be Jimmy, who will be discussing the financial aspects. We'll have Ahmed, who's discussing the social and ethical issues. We'll have Robert, who's discussing the political issues, and we'll have Hein, who's discussing the legal aspects. And we'll have myself as well. For those of you who may be new to the company or who simply aren't familiar with the situation, I'm going to go over a quick timeline so we all catch up on the same page. So here's our timeline. In October 2010, we opened our new Lafarge cement facility, and this is on the northern side of Syria, and it was a cost of $680 million. And then in December 2010, we had the Arab Spring, which began the Tunisian protests, which is a combination of political and community issues that are at hand, and it's quickly expanding from the southern side of Syria. And then in March of 2011, this began the Syrian civil war. And so this is here where we end up today, where forces are slowly beginning to move north towards us, our position, and we're having to accommodate for those issues. So in this board meeting, we're discussing the strategy that we developed in order to mitigate our losses and to protect ourselves from the situation at hand. So there are two questions at play here. Do we leave or do we stay? So this board here is what we're saying. We should slowly leave over the course of 18 months. This will lower our losses while living up to our mission statement. And so I'm going to give a quick overview of the factors at play here, and then my colleagues will go into greater depth. So first of all, financially. Financially, we've just made a $680 million investment, and there's 8,000 tons of cement produced every day, roughly 500,000, and we have developed a huge leg up over the competition by building this factory. And we also need to recover this. And our placement is also very prime, given the location and our competition. So also ethically, the local safety will soon be rough given the hardships and the scenarios, and the locals will need our support, our help and support, and we are now a part of the community, and we kind of have an obligation to help them out. Politically, whatever actions we take will reflect on how we stand politically, and we want to have as many allies as we can while reducing our enemies. And there's also the legal aspect, which is where while this is a very difficult path to walk, we have a responsibility to protect our employees, and we can't help terrorist organizations either directly or monetarily. And so now I'll pass it on to Jimmy, who will be discussing our financials, and then the remainder of our colleagues will follow.
Looking at our income statements from 2006 to 2011, we can see a steady decline in net income with the exception of a sudden spike in 2008. Nonetheless, this drop from $2 billion and $2 million in 2006 to $1 billion and $89 million in 2011 represents a staggering 46% decline in net income. In addition to the decline in net income, we've also suffered a huge decline in net margins. From 2006 to 2011, our net margins have dropped 49%. This number represents our profit percentage from the total year's revenue after all operating expenses. With this data, it is clear that we have a continuing income and profit problem. Therefore, our focus needs to be on lowering overall costs by mitigating riskier and less rewarding ventures. This suggests that our primary efforts should be in operations within countries where we already have a significant production capacity, large market share, and good growth prospects for the future. Considering the huge declines in income numbers, we need to take a more defensive approach, especially in countries like Syria, where the environment is uncertain. In 2011, our cement production capacity in Syria only represented 4.45% of the total Middle East and Africa production. While this number and the 23% market share was expected to grow, that trajectory has undoubtedly been shifted as civil tensions are escalating. Our plant needs to be located near demand, and at this time, demand in this region is questionable. With this data, we recommend that the company slowly reduces operations in Syria to the minimum needed to operate the plant. However, with investments of upwards to $680 million, we simply cannot suspend operations completely. Closing the plant completely may entice others to destroy, vandalize, and steal from our facilities. If we leave completely, there may not be a plant to return to. Therefore, we must hold our ground and continue funding security to protect our financial assets in Syria, but only to the minimum required. With consideration to our strategic placement in the Middle East, we are expected to hugely benefit off of the reconstruction period after the war. Our production capacity and market share will undoubtedly grow then, but for now we need to play things more defensively. Slowly reducing operations will allow us to keep some money flowing in to repay the debt and allow us to keep our financially advantageous position in Syria. For now, we just need to mitigate our risk without completely losing our footing in the region.
I will speak about the social and ethical points involved in the case. Beginning with the social concerns, we had to discuss our presence in Syria encouraged business growth and provided employment to the local community and many related industries that depended on Lafarge in some way. And that was an important issue for us to discuss and realize that leaving the country will have a negative impact on Syrians and will leave many families without income. However, on the other hand, seeing that staying in Syria could threaten our employees and the locals who would be taking extra risks to do what is expected of them as their jobs, and how that is an ethical issue for us. In this graph, we see that leaving Syria actually had a big effect on unemployment and the whole economy as a result, and negatively affected Syrians. But in comparison with the more immediate and violent conditions in the country, we had to think about our responsibility as a corporation and be willing to address these concerns and take the necessary steps. And here are other points that we needed to consider in the process of going over the counter arguments, including the financial losses and all the assets that we had to leave behind in Syria, the effects of the decision on our relationships with other businesses, and if our decision has any effects or could weaken any political or strategic relationships we have developed in the country. Here are the main ethical arguments for leaving Syria and what we saw as our duty to everyone involved. First and most importantly, we had to protect our employees from any kind of danger in the regions where the Islamic State was present, and we had to leave early. We had almost 5,500 employees in the region, and many of them had to commute and cross dangerous areas and checkpoints, putting them at huge risk that we could not justify. The next point is seeing how our business in the region could be funding the wrong people and somehow financing the extremist groups, as we had no control over the parties associated with our company, and if they would indirectly make the situation worse and funnel money to these groups. And within that, we had to be aware of human rights laws that seemed to be in line with our decision at the time, governing putting employees at danger. And finally, I'd say we used somewhat of a utilitarian ethical approach in this process. We looked at the outcomes very carefully, and we went over each and every concern in the issue, discussing how it could affect everyone involved, from the community and employees and stakeholders, and considering each possible outcome.
Continuing to operate our Syrian plant will have political strain on our company. There are three sides in the conflict that we will have to account for and decide where our allegiances lie. The choices are France and our allies, Syria and our allies, or ISIS. To maintain our current political position in favor, we will have to tread this war carefully. So we have analyzed these three courses of action and their implications on our business operations in Syria. France. To side with France would mean to maintain a good relationship with the Syrian government and its people. The benefit of this would be France's support of our expansion into global markets, which will carry a lot of weight. The con of this would be to move out of Syria sooner rather than expected to back France's decision on the war. Moving out of Syria would mean significant amount of losses for us, including the network we have built up since beginning operations in Syria. To mitigate the loss of our network, we would have to spend a serious amount of political capital to reform it and possibly expand it after the war to include the ruling party. Syria. To side with Syria would mean siding with France's interests in the region, further meaning that we would have to stay in Syria for a significant period of time before leaving. We will have to support the rule of the current government to maintain our network. The pros of siding with Syria is the stability that it provides for business operations and the structure of business culture. The cons of siding with Syria is siding with unsavory groups by association that are likely to come to the Syrian government's aid. Siding with Syria can hurt our reputation among customers in the Western world and throughout the Gulf states. ISIS. To side with ISIS is a lose-lose situation. Best case scenario, we lose the support of the French government, are heavily sanctioned, and are fined. Syria would become beyond angry, and we would most definitely lose the support of the current government if they are successful in beating the rebellion. Our network in Syria would crumble, and business operations shall suffer. ISIS would require bribes in order to allow our operations to continue in their territory. We would be branded as criminals if we choose to pay the bribes to ISIS, and our political standing and reputation shall crumble all over the world, no doubt costing us millions. The political implications of leaving Syria as soon as possible would hurt our valuable network there. Therefore, leaving Syria in 18 months would be enough time to prepare ourselves to leave the country and maintain contact with our network. If ISIS enters our region sooner rather than expected, we follow our contingency plan and cut our losses. Leave and we do not negotiate with ISIS. The political implications of staying in Syria are immense, let alone the legal implications, which Hain shall comment on.
From legal perspective, these are the charges we could potentially face if we maintain our business in Syria during the civil war. First, we could be charged with complexity and war crimes since the country will be locked down by terrorist organizations like ISIS, and we would have to bribe or make deals with terrorists for safe passage and raw materials. Just by dealing with terrorist organizations, we would be dragged to war crimes charge. Second, by making deals with terrorist organizations, we are literally financing them to commit war crimes, resulting in the death of innocent people and children. This is also one of the main ways terrorist organizations make money, making deals with businesses in return for safe passage. Another way terrorist organizations make money is through taxation. These terrorist organizations charge import taxes, rent for businesses, fines for breaking laws, utility bills, and income tax from residents and businessmen in its territory. For these, we could be charged with financing of terrorist organizations. Another charge would be forced labor, since some employees would want to stay away or flee from the country, but maintaining business would mean forcing employees to work. All these charges would also result in another charge called crimes against humanity. All these legal charges would take time and effort to solve and would not be ideal for the image of our business going forward. And also, lawsuits can be costly even if the charges are dropped. In addition, if the NGOs such as ECCHR and Shopper got involved in the charges, the situation is going to be tricky and they will keep charging us until the case is over. Next, George will be talking about mission statement as well as our closing strategy on doing business in Syria.
Thanks, Hein. And I want to go over our corporate mission statement. A fundamental choice, sustainable development. The group is convinced that sustained economic growth cannot occur without social progress, environmental protection, and the respect for local communities. So we need to live up to these values. We want to expand on them by the actions we've discussed here, and we will hold our obligation to help our employees and the locals who all need our help in this tragic time. We have prime positioning, locals are begging for work, we have a huge investment on the line, and we just need to be careful. So here's our closing strategy. In a broad sense, supplier power is high. No one else in the region right now. Buyer power is low because competition is leaving. No new entrants are going to be coming. No new new plants are going to be built right now. Substitutes are low, resources are scarce, and concrete is an essential product for these people. From a financial aspect, we currently produce $500,000 a day. At the end of 18 months, we're projected to make $270 million off this plant. We'll have prime placement for this, and the country will need to rebuild itself, especially after the war is over, and we will be there to answer. Ethically, we will be there to help support and protect the locals and their economy. There'll be less poverty, less crime, there'll be more employed, and they'll be less likely to get involved with the war. From a political aspect, we need to make sure that we're in line with our allies and that what we're doing our part is the correct thing to do. From legal aspect, the factory, whether it's open or closed, is a liability. That's just the fact of the matter. We can't let our investment help terrorist organizations if it's taken over. And we will follow the law and war agreements to make sure that no laws are broken and no rules are broken. And so by the end of it, we want to remove all our foreign workers. We leave only volunteer locals. We will not pressure them to work. They'll only be volunteers. We want to provide protection and escape for workers, and we'll guarantee that. And if the situation gets dangerous, if things get hairy, we'll fully shut down the factory, evacuate everyone, and leave the facility and cut our losses. And simply, we will not negotiate with terrorists. That's just the fact of the matter. We will not negotiate with terrorists whatsoever. We will not support their actions and the causes that they want to reach. So we feel this is the best option given all scenarios and factors. This is a very difficult situation to face where there is guaranteed bad side to every possible outcome, and we simply feel the strategy has the most positives. And yes, there will be tension and negatives, but we only have so many options, and we feel this will suppress our losses while being the safest for the company, the economy, and our employees. So we just want to thank you, and we hope you understand.